Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's up, brother?
It's such a great way to start the show. Every time it gets us. Every time. I'm doing great.
It's fun now because, typically, transparently, we haven't done video, so we can't see each other when we do the show recently because poor internet connection. Both of us travel a lot and live the lifestyle, but it's fun to make that announcement now, which may be the first time I've done it when I can actually see your face and your actual reaction. You're like walking around like you're getting ready for a fight, and we're calling you to the ring. It's cool.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Cool. Tim, what I want to talk about today is something that a lot of the guys ask, or it takes them a while to get to, but how to reignite your sex life. That's a topic that I think all men are interested in. One, how do I better it? But really, if things haven't been going wrong with your partner, how do you reignite that spark and really get your sex life back to where you want it to be?
Great question. Great question. And, it's one that, like you said, the men coming into the program, it's funny because so many of them almost have this sordid little secret that they've usually reached a point in their marriage where often they would rather use porn than instead of having sex with the wife. Usually because, at that point they have almost turned it into their relationship, that is, this insurmountable obstacle, if you will. And I get it, I can understand it's so easy to end up in that position. You go to work, you work hard, you are busy making decisions all day, boom, 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 boom. So many people demanding so much of you that by the time you come home, it's understandable that, the guys are just exhausted and they just sometimes don't have it in them to actually be able to connect with the wife. They want to, they love her, they want to be able to connect with her, but sometimes, they're just not able to. They don't have the energy or the tools, especially when they walk into the home after a long day's work and the kids are screaming, the kids are shouting. There's more jobs getting thrown at them after they've just been making decisions all day. The wife's been left with the kids all day as well, so she's usually, she's kind of had enough by that point too. And it's tough. It's a really tough situation to be in. And over time, when things go unsaid and things get avoided, it can quite easily create this void between the man and the wife. And they just fall out of sync with one another sexually. And before they know it, like so many of them tell us, they end up just turning to porn because it's an easier option than figuring out how to reignite their sex life. And it's such a key aspect because, there's two options, right? There's three options. The first one is you do nothing and continue as you are. Option number two is that you end up just leaving the relationship or even settling. Well, I guess that's option number one. You leave it and you settle. Do nothing and settle, rather. Option number two is that you leave the relationship because you tell yourself a story of, the relationship is just too far gone, but then usually what will happen is you will take the same problems into another relationship and you will struggle to get beyond that point. The same issues will arise at a similar point. Option number three is you do the work. You see what's going on and you address it. And, it's not an overnight fix, is it? As, you often educate me on some of the work that you've done, Doug, and it's really enlightening. And, as men, we can so often get so focused on the action and the result that we almost expect an immediate payout. But the relationship is kind of like a bank account, right? You've got to keep making deposits in order to be able to make a withdrawal. Otherwise, if you try and make a withdrawal that's too big or too soon, you end up going overdrawn, and that's not a good place to be.
No, not at all. And you nailed that. Even now today, I come home sometimes and I only have one child. My wife's like, here, take him. He's been a terror all day. I need a break. And as men, as we come back, and we're in that, especially us that are business owners and have been successful, we spend our whole day making decisions, being authoritative or assertive, and moving the needle. And we get home, and that can rise in conflict. And as you said, and that conflict happens oftentimes, that creates distance, right? And you look at your partner, you're like, well, I'll show her, I'm going to, pull away. So she runs to me, and therefore I get love and validation. So you push away, you push your partner away a little bit. And if your partner's strong, they're also going to get a little scared. They're going to, recoil, and they push, and that creates distance. And that gap between one day turns into 1 week, right? And it turns into a pattern of 1 month, and you slowly put a little mud on the mirror, so to speak, or the glass between you, and you get further and further apart. And as you get further and further apart, it becomes your norm, right? And that relationship can turn into roommates. Oh, did you do the dishes? Do you take out the trash? Things like that. And for us guys that are a little more on the alpha side, it's a hard one to digest and give in. And turning to porn for a lot of the men and a lot of the guys listening to this, it's easy, right? I can't remember the exact number, Tim, but it's something like, it's crazy. And I'm making this up, but I'm pretty close to something around 60% of internet searches are porn related, which is huge. That's billions of searches going down every week that are porn related, because it's an easy escape, because you don't have to risk anything. There's no risk. There's no risk of rejection. There's no risk of feeling ashamed because you come too early, or you can't get it up, or whatever it is. Or for some guys who have confided in us, it's the risk that your wife wants it more than you do. And maybe you're a little older and your libido and your testosterone has gone down, and maybe your wife's younger or hers hasn't. But it's the story we create around society that happens. And when we get that story in our head that we should be better in bed, we should be having more sex, we should be X, Y, Z, that story starts to build this distance that creates almost like a water blanket that goes over our sex life. And so instead of reigniting or igniting that spark, really what we're doing is constantly putting it out. And then we thought, oh, screw it. I'm just going to go to Pornhub, YouPorn, whatever site you want to go to, and I'm just going to get my fix. And 5 minutes later, or whatever it may be, you're off and running. And, then you have even more distance between you and your partner, because now your partner doesn't feel wanted. So it's a deadly cycle that we can get in as men. But that's kind of the accepted cycle in modern society right now.
What were those sites you mentioned again? Let me just write them down.
They'll be in the show notes. I thought I got them from you, but anyway.
Yeah. And it's, it's fascinating, right? Because in my opinion, there's the first approach to this actually has nothing to do with sex, in my opinion. The first way that if you want to reignite your sex life, then you got to first focus on being present in the relationship without wanting to get anything in return. Because if you are wanting to go be present in the relationship so you can then get laid, you're keeping score. It's going to be transactional. And if you then don't get what you want, subconsciously, whether you know it or not, you're going to mark that one down. Boom. Okay, well, tonight I did this and I didn't get laid. So that's okay. Tomorrow night, and that's 2 nights. And so then by the end of the week, it all ends up coming over, no pun intended, coming out in some argument over nothing. And, your partner doesn't know where it's come from. No pun intended. So the biggest shifts that we see for in the relationships for the men that come out of the Alpha Reset always happen when they're actually able to go home, look the woman in the eye, be present, be there, and actually engage with her. You know, reprioritize their life. And that sounds so big, doesn't it? But really, all that really means is them realizing that, do you know what? There's more to life than business. There's more to life than making money. You know, there's a woman here that I love who is with me, not for the money or for the business, but she's with me because of XYZ reason. They really get back in touch with the reason why they were with this woman in the first place. And if you think about, you know, when you first got together with your partner and your sex life you may have been very different, that wasn't because you were trying to get laid, I bet. Anyway, I bet it's because you were so present in the relationship, having so much fun, putting in effort, you were investing into it, you're making deposits into the bank account. Just like when the men come to us and say that, you know, they have a problem in their business. You know, they've got a problem with their sales, but when you actually dive into it, the problem has nothing to do with sales, but instead it's got everything to do with their focus, what they're focusing on every day. They're lacking focus. So as a result, that shows up in their leadership and sales drop. But they think they have a sales problem, so they try and solve it by focusing more on sales. But it just doesn't work. It all starts with the business owner. And it's the same with your sex life in the relationship. Now, you may think that sex is the problem, but really, that's just a symptom. Usually, it's the symptom of a problem of just disconnect.
So true. You know, what if you approach it a little differently? So, guys, if you're finding yourself in this situation, right, well, you're ready to reignite your sex life. You want more sex. Even if you're not sure if your partner does or not, but you've decided, look, I am going to be the leader in my family. I'm going to be the leader in my relationship. I'm going to take charge. So how do you reignite your sex life? Tim, why don't you start and give a couple tips, and then I'll go back and forth and we can give these guys some ideas.
Okay. So we've spoken about this a lot, but I think, you know, the first thing is you've got to know the love language of your partner. You just have. And it may change over time. Amelia and I did ours a few weeks ago, and hers was different to what it was a couple of years ago, and she was actually surprised by it, and so was I. Yeah, if I was one trying to connect with her in the way that I actually was, in fact, trying to connect with her and give her love and show her love in the way that she wants to receive it, but it's changed, then, you know, I'm not going to be hitting the mark. Straight away, there's going to be disconnect. So the first thing, you've got to know the love language. The second thing, once you do know the love language, is all about being able to show that and do it without keeping score, without wanting or expecting anything in return. Do it because you truly want to. Do it because you truly want the best for your partner. You truly love her. And, you know, she isn't a business problem. So she doesn't want to be solved. She doesn't want you to come home on an evening with the same problem-solving mentality that you've been going through the day with, applying it to your business to grow your business. That isn't who she is. So you've got to be able to switch off and decompress, which is kind of another one, let's say. But then, you know, give her love in the way that she wants to receive it without keeping score. And, you know, on top of that, of course, there are some other things you can do as well to actually spice up the sex life, more geared towards that side of things. I imagine that's what we're all going to dive into now, Doug.
No, well, you look at me because I'm laughing, but I think we haven't gotten there yet, and we can definitely do the more things to spice up the sex life, because I think it's an important conversation. Or maybe that's part 2 of this podcast. We can do 2 episodes here. But I still think what you want to do, when we look at women, let's just assume everybody's partner is a woman in this scenario, they're looking for connection. We all are, but especially the connection. And something that I've noticed, well, in my relationships, and also when I look at the men, is when we come home, we lose the fun, right? When you've gone to roommate mode, so to speak, and many of you are going, okay, I'm not even in roommate mode, Doug. Like, I walk by this person, and it's like a bad roommate. They don't do the dishes right. They leave their clothes on the floor. You turn into bad roommates where it's an adversarial relationship. I think then a couple of tips that I could give you right away, and we'll go back and forth because I know, Tim, you and I both have a laundry list here. But one simple one to add on to what Tim is saying is do a gratitude practice, right? So start this off, guys. This is your challenge. I'm going to give it to you right now. 30 days, first thing in the morning, write down, I love my wife or partner or whatever for or because ... right? And then just thank them for that. It can be simple. Especially when you're fighting, it's a hard one. I love my wife because she takes care of my kids and keeps them alive while I'm at work. Whatever it is for you. I can guarantee after 30 days or somewhere along that journey, your wife is going to become a better person, right? She's not going to change, actually. It's your perception of her. And as your perception of her changes, your energy changes. And as your energy changes, that's going to allow her to notice and actually become more drawn to you, which is a first step in reigniting the sex life. The second tip I'll leave you, and then Tim, I'll volley it back in your court. The second thing, guys, that I'm going to encourage you to do, and this is something I did, is I took my boardroom mentality and took it into the bedroom or into the home life. I decided when I go home, I want to be the CFO of my family. Now, when I say CFO, I do not mean the guy that's watching the family budget, things like that. Not at all. Become the chief fun officer for your family. Make that your job. You are now the CFO before you walk in the door and every moment you're in there. Your job is to be the chief fun officer for your family. And imagine what that's going to change, right? Giggles, laughter. Remember when you first met your partner, how much you would laugh at silly, stupid jokes or text messages or whatever it was? Bring that back. Bring that spark back into your life, into your family, into your home. Be the chief fun officer of your home. And if you add gratitude practice and what Tim said, I can guarantee you're going to start to see that spark reignite quickly.
Reminds me a lot of one of the men in the Brotherhood, and I'll say his name because we've interviewed him in the Facebook group for how he did it. Rick and Chelsea. We spoke about those guys on an episode I think last week. Currently they're in the US, or they may have just got back, and they are going out. They've been out there, rented an RV, and they're on a road trip scouting out locations for a retreat. Rick owns a company in the UK, a cloud-based company, does very well, and Chelsea is a solicitor, I think. But they've really got in touch with their desire and their vision to one day have a retreat center and live by a lake, and they've gone out there to scout out locations. And Rick has really embodied this. Rick has really, upon returning home from the Alpha Reset, in Chelsea's testimonial, it's so heartwarming. She literally says, he has given me permission to make it safe for me to be me again. Because he's not walking through the door in an evening, stressed out, and she's then not walking on eggshells, and they're not having arguments over pointless things that before would never have bothered them. Instead, Rick is walking through the door as the CFO with a different job for the evening, and she's loving it. She really is. And the picture they posted in the Brotherhood a week or so ago with them in the US, they're just beaming, absolutely beaming. And, it takes the lead of the man to take this kind of role in order for the woman to then step into it too. If we look at this from a primal anthropological standpoint, now, women need the safe container, the safe space of a man, so the masculine energy around them. They need to feel safe that is there so that they can surrender into it and then be themselves. And they start to blossom almost like a flower. Now, if that isn't there, they then feel very vulnerable to attack. And when I say it isn't there, that doesn't mean that the man isn't there physically. He could be there physically. But if he isn't there emotionally, then he may as well not be there, because she will then still feel that same level of vulnerability, in which in which situation she will do one of two things. Either she'll rise and become the alpha, which again kills the sex life anyway, or can, or B, she will fall and become anxious and depressed, and sometimes even seek salvations in the arms of another man who can or who is willing to provide that emotional container. Now, when you do provide this, when you walk through the door as the CFO and it's consistent and you're doing it without keeping score, without expectation, you're making those deposits, what kind of effect do you think that then has on the woman in your life? Do you think she feels safe to then flower and flourish and be herself? Or do you think she feels vulnerable? And this is primal wiring that that is in all of us as men and women that we experience. We cannot get away from it. It's there. So it works. It's such a great inclusion, Doug, of being the CFO. Every time I hear it, it cracks me up and reminds me of, helps me to really reflect on, well, how am I being as a CFO? And who knows, maybe you're listening to this and maybe this just, maybe it isn't for you. Maybe you prefer to come home on an evening and, try the hard route and try and focus on reigniting your sex life by buying more sex toys or booking a saucy weekend away or wherever. Cool. If that's what you want to do and, that's your choice, awesome. If that's working for you, keep doing it. However, if it's not, then you might want to try this other way that, being the CFO, that a lot of the men that we work with anyway in the brotherhood, they've chosen to take up the role and it's paying dividends for them. Paying dividends, quite apt for the CFO.
It is. Well, I'll also say that if it's working for you, then this doesn't apply to you, right? But is it working for you and your partner? And I do think we should do maybe a two-parter here, Tim. I'll add on one more thing, guys, here. And there's so much that we could dive into on this subject. And it's an important one because intimacy is not necessarily sex, but it's definitely part of it. You're going to grow closer to your partner. And there's a lot of people that say that intimacy in your sex life is a direct reflection of your financial wealth as well, which is very important to consider, what flows through you, so to speak. Another thing you can add on to this, gentlemen, is I'd like you to think of what would the ideal romantic you be like, right? The romance version of you. If you had to sweep your current partner off their feet and take them away from you, how would you do it? Now, I know it's not a fun thing to think about, right? Nobody's going to take my partner, my wife, or what have you, but you never know. We see it. We talk to guys all the time. Tim's always talking to guys on a daily basis, men, powerful men like you, who unbeknownst to them, they, stopped dating their wife and the intimacy fell apart and they found out that their wife had fallen into the arms of another man. So how would you steal your partner from yourself, right? What would you do? Would you send her love notes? Would you take her out on a romantic dinner? What would you do? I encourage you to actually think about this and write it down. Write it down like you would a business plan. Write it down like you would write your goals. The same ferociousness that you would apply to those areas, apply it to this. And then I'm going to give you one more thing. Then take action. Steal your wife from the former you before somebody else does. Go ahead and date her. Date her with wild abandon, right? If you already don't have a good sex life, you got nothing to lose, right? Go all in. Share with her your wild fantasies. Trust me, guys, women in your life are crazier than you think they are, and they're willing to do crazy things with a man they trust. Beyond your wildest dreams. Theirs are probably a step or two ahead there. But date them. Date her in such a manner as if you were trying to steal her away, right? Make her the object of your affection, right? So you figured out her love language. You come home present. You've decided to be the CFO of your world, and you're doing a 30-day gratitude practice. You add this in, the dating part, I can guarantee you, money back guarantee right now, that your sex life will reignite. It will reignite into such a flame that'll be almost impossible to put out.
Wow. Gold. Absolute gold.
Well, Tim, I think that's a wrap for us today. So, gentlemen, I encourage you, as always, in the moment of insight to take action. And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of The Powerful Man Show.